thank you all for joining us. Thank you all, you rad cats, for joining us here at the Radical Catalyst Club. It's week number 6 in our weekly speaker series. And we do this every week. And then Thursday, we have a breakout group. And we were really excited, especially now. Look at all these people, all these wonderful new people joining in. It's like a time of growth. We started this club from the Burning Man convening at Esalen, and its purpose is just, you know, to help facilitate and help other people create the change they wish to see in the world. So we're stoked that you're here. If you love this, get involved. Come to the breakout groups tomorrow. We'll send everybody that information. Share this like word of mouth. That's how everything's moving. And how are we, right? Neil and I were just talking about the pros and cons of living indoors and outdoors, and being I'm just fortunate. I'm coming to you from a farm in Waimanalo, which is I give thanks every day for the very simple kind of rough life that I carved out here, and sending you all aloha. And I hope you're doing well. If anybody came here without a friend, you've got one on the screen right now. I'm sure you've got a lot of these other people are also feeling that as well. So very great to be connected with you all. During this talk, if you do have questions, we'll have like a Q&A later, but if you want to get them out so you remember them, you can always post them in the chat. We'll be looking at that. And so now I would love to introduce our speaker for week number 6. This is Rosie von Lila. She is a powerhouse, a superhuman. Let me just read the first part of the biography right here. Rosie von Lila, a polished diplomatic advocate and negotiator and highly organized operations executive who gets it done gloriously. I love that. Gets it done glorious. That's very true. I also have been involved in Burning Man as staff for years, and we crossed paths, but we didn't really connect until I was living in New York, and we met at an event and I'm really happy to know you. Rosie is the architect of the Von Lila Framework, which she will talk about, a board member of New America Alliance, 20 years, Burning Man, various roles, helping that organization grow and form, cultural relations maven, now as an advisor. She's a leader, an innovator, public speaker, a champion of liberty and engagement. And with that, Rosie, I'm going to turn off this background because I find it a little distracting. Welcome to the Rad Cat Show.
Thank you so much, Ruhab. It's I've been really excited about this, and I'm so happy to have the opportunity to speak with everybody here tonight and be in conversation with you. And thank you to Neil as well.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. Neil, Philia, and I started this, and now it's just growing. Every week, we just see more and more people. We were talking about this. We'll look back on this in 10 years and be like, oh, remember that when there was just like 15 of us and all this stuff that we were able to activate in the world. So let's start. You know, Rosie, where would you like to start? Would you like to start with the Von Lila Framework, perhaps?
Yeah, let's start there. One of the questions you had asked me is, was there a moment of clarity or epiphany in what led me to creating this framework? And the answer is yes. Before I tell that, I do want to say, if you have any questions while I'm chatting, or if there's anything that you're curious about, please go ahead and write it in the chat box. I'll see it as it pops up. And as I'm giving a little bit of background here, I would love if you would take a moment and just pop into the chat box about what you're interested in about being here this evening. What is it that you're curious to know or want to learn? So go ahead and pop that in there as I'm chatting here. So let's see. The first thing that I want to say is what drives all of my work and what's behind all of my work is enjoyment. Can be described as enjoyment. Everything that I do is about being nourishing, being nurturing, and being pleasurable, with the end result of that being a joyful culture. one where there's human thriving and human flourishing. And so I'm up to a lot of work throughout my career. Some of it has been, emotionally really difficult. Things like working in the human trafficking space and getting present to the realities around that, getting present to the subjugation of large parts of the human population. And in the face of all that, I go through the experience of feeling all of that and return to this concept of enjoyment, enjoying the work, even when the work is the difficult work of dealing with the hardships of being human and the hardships of some of our human systems. So that's what's behind this. And to answer your prior question about was there a moment of clarity? In 2013, I was living in the Bay Area, and I had been learning about this idea of manifestation, which for me is really about getting clear on what you want to create in the world, and then looking for the opportunities for that to happen, and being open to it. And so I was very skeptical, and I said, all right, if there really is something to this manifestation stuff, I want to meet. And I thought of somebody who I thought was like entirely out of my ecosystem, which was Elon Musk. And I was like, if there's really is something to this whole setting goals and then they happen, let's see if this happens. And within 2 months, through incredible serendipity, I not only was helping at the Milken conference, helping his brother with his nonprofit, I then got invited to sit at the dinner table with his brother. And so it was me, and then the people from the nonprofit, and then Jeff Skoll, and then a couple other people, and then an empty seat, and then me. And who came and sat there like 10 minutes later was Elon Musk. This was 2 months after I said this impossible thing. And so after that, I realized that I needed to have bigger dreams. And so I declared, I said, what I want to use my life for is to work on the world's largest challenges with the most intelligent, most creative, most powerful, most effective people in the world. And I declared what my legacy would be that I'm living into, which is when I get to the end of my life, I will have created a body of work that universally connects all people and creates the conditions for human thriving. So that's what all my work is about. Enter the von Lila Framework, which I wrote in 2015. And at the time, I had been working for Burning Man headquarters. And my title was Cultural Relations Maven. And what I did for the org, I was hired by Marian, who's the CEO and one of the founders. And I worked with her and Larry Harvey and the other founders. I would travel with Larry and Marian mostly and represent the organization with communities all over the world, and discover how, support the teams that were out in the world, discovering how the Burning Man organization could support the expansion of this culture that is about generosity, participation, and creativity. And so through that, and through having, I started going to Burning Man when I was 19 in 2000, and I've been 19 times. And so I've had a lot of lived experience of what it takes to build participatory culture. And so that's where the framework came from. And I'm going to take a moment and share my screen with you to walk through the framework very briefly. Now, I normally have this up on my website, but we are in the process of giving birth to a beautiful new website, which I'm super excited about. So instead, I will walk you through this. And if you'd like to receive a copy of this, you can send me in a private message, send me your email address. Also, if you're interested in connecting with me further on this, I'm on Twitter and I'm on LinkedIn. It's at Rosie von Lila. And if you want to, by the end of this conversation, if there's something that you want to tweet about from the conversation or tweet it out, you can hashtag it with #RadCatsRosie. All right, so this is a framework for stakeholder engagement. And it breaks down into 3 parts. The first part is attitude. And so there's two parts of the attitude to hold to create participatory cultures. The first one is curiosity. So when you're holding an attitude of curiosity, first you ask questions of yourself to identify what is it that you want to have in your life. And then you can assess what is it that I'm available to give, what can I contribute? And then you can look at what is my duty in this space? What do I have a responsibility towards? As you start to realize what it is that you can give and be empowered in yourself, that you actually do have something to contribute. And I don't really need to say this to this group because we're all so active and like living in that culture of contribution. But for people who are new to it, once they realize that they can contribute something, they can ask questions of others. So those questions would be things like, what do you want to see improved in your community? What are your ideas on how that can happen? What's stopping it or making it not possible for those things to happen? And then most importantly, how can you help in creating that solution? The second element of the framework is inclusion. So holding an attitude of inclusion. And this can be summarized as nothing about us without us. So if you're creating a solution for a community in your town, it doesn't work to create that solution in a silo without talking to the neighborhood people who sit on their stoops or who play in the streets or who are active in the churches. You have to be in conversation with the people for whom the solution is being made. The second part of the framework, and there's 7 elements, by the way, the second part is access. So this is access to physical space and access to information. So the first sentence there says the most important space is a seat at the table. And beyond that, it's important to provide physical spaces or have those be available where people can meet and can have what are called social collisions, where they, we've all probably had that experience where you want to do something, it's floating around in your mind, and then you meet somebody who happens to be the key person to help make that happen. So creating opportunities for that through physical space. And on the topic of a seat at the table, I want to say that I, as somebody who is a speaker, I get invited to participate at events and be on panels. And I've gotten to the point where if there isn't diversity on the panel, I won't participate in the panel, because that's being a stand and a commitment to ensuring, to using my power to ensure that underrepresented voices are given an opportunity to be heard. So the other thing is, we oftentimes, I've heard this many times, and I've sometimes previously said it myself, which is, well, we would love to have diverse speakers, or we'd love to have more people of color at this event, or any people of color at this event, but we just don't know anybody. And we put it out to our network and we do our best. And that phrase of we do our best or we're doing our best doesn't cut it in my book. There has to be behind it a commitment to actually generating diversity. And so that's access to physical space, a seat at the table. Access to information. So not everybody in the world has access to the internet, our infinite source of information, but there are many people working on that. But so it's important to have access to the internet, access to libraries, access to smartphones, to be able to gather information that's needed so that you can generate your solutions. And then very importantly, with access to information, my friend Nancy Giordano, she sums this up very nicely. She says, in order to create a movement, you have to build a caring community and then generate the storytelling tools to give them so that they can go out there and be evangelists for whatever the mission is of that community. Part 3 is about agency. So agency are behaviors that you can embody that will help to foster participation. So number 1 is the simple act of inviting. And inviting, it's amazing how oftentimes, like for those of us who are doers, we'll think that we have everything all set up, and then we just kind of expect people to get involved, or we want them to get involved, or we don't make the request for them to be involved. And so inviting is very simply, would you like to be involved in this? Can you help with this? Can you contribute in this way? How do you see that you can help? Like just simply inviting them. Element 6 of the framework is connecting. So the behavior of building our human network, building relationships. And it says here that connectors facilitate introductions without the need to gain from them. But the footnote there is that if you are being generous in your network and making connections and paying attention for who needs what, and then connecting them, you will become valuable within that ecosystem. So it's this really nice way to build your social capital and build your value, but doing it from a place of caring. And lastly, element 7 is translating. So this is really important to be able to, when there's differences, to be able to translate the communication from one party to another. And those differences can be anything from generational differences to cultural differences, language differences, etc. So it's good to develop skills to be able to listen and empathize with what is this person saying and what do they want, and what is this person saying, what do they want, and then be able to facilitate that communication. So that's the framework in a nutshell. Once the new website is up, you can find it at vonlila.com. And if you want to reach me by email, you can do so at getinvolved@vonlila.com. And I want to give a special thanks to my dear friend Lionel Mittelpunkt in Israel, who helped me with forming this story in 2015. So thank you to him.
Thank you for sharing the steps and the framework. It's incredible. And also, I'm really happy that I did my my homework before you shut the site down.
Oh, you want me to open it?
No, I did. No, I already.
Oh, the site.
I've been looking at it for like a couple of days because I had forgot about something, and I went to it like right before the interview, and I was like, oh, is this a test?
It's called a test of the universe. I've been this is you get a peek into my own procrastination for like 2 weeks. I've been like, I got to update the website. And then, so last night before I give this talk, I decided to update my website, and I used a new template, and now the thing has to be fixed. To bring in somebody at a higher pay grade to fix it.
Yeah, that's, you know, that's one thing you definitely learn in Black Rock City is our strength is our adaptability.
Yes, exactly.
Hey, can I just do I just had a vision of like the framework. There's a song and I want in my head, just a quick jingle about the framework.
Please
so
do it.
For you guys out there, I specialize in immediate music, and kind of one of the things we do here is I just got it. Wait, step 1 is
the first element is
yes.
curiosity.
Oh, I was curious, I was furious about the state of the world. I felt alone, I was living in confusion. Oh, I needed some kind of inclusion. I was out there, I didn't have no access to space, no information. Hey, anybody out there been in this situation? Steps in a framework that can bring heaven on earth. Oh, you got to invite, get people on your wave. Oh, connect them with each other for the direction they crave. Oh, in the language they speak, you got to teach. This is the way to a better day. Oh, 7 elements in the framework bring heaven on earth. Little musical segue.
Yeah.
Thank you for making those 7 elements, because that wouldn't have existed until just now.
Thank you.
And that's a good little you know, musical interlude. So if we can take these elements and this framework and ask you, like, based on your vision, how would you see society being reimagined through this huge shift and post when we come out of this.
Sure.
Can you speak to that?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Quick shout out to Will Roger, one of the founders of Burning Man, who is on here, sending you lots of love in Gerlach, Nevada. And shout out to Jen Sander, who I imagine is in Vancouver. She also works at Burning Man headquarters. Thanks so much for coming.
Hi, neighbors. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Let's see. In answering that, I'd also like to address Neil's question of having a local example of applying the 7 elements. So let's see. I was recently introduced to the foundation by the singer Jewel. She has an organization that she's had for the last, I think it's 18 years, called the Inspiring Children Foundation. And as I was hearing about this in the last couple of days and learning more about it, I realized, oh, they're very much applying the elements of the framework. So Jewel, when she was, I think in her late teens, she was homeless and lived in a car. And when she started to finally make money as a musician, she was committed to giving back, and she had struggled with mental health issues. And so she wanted to create a space where youth can get mental health care and have community and generate safety. And so the organization has been around for almost 2 decades, and it's entirely run by the youth in the program. They have an executive director, but other than that, it's the kids, the young people who are running it. And they have a physical space in Nevada. And we were just on the phone yesterday with someone from there, and they were showing us this meditation room that the youth have built. Like, they collected the wood for it, they built the room, they got their hands dirty, they learned skills, and in all of this, they're being empowered. And so that's a really good example of Jewel having curiosity about developing her own life, getting to the place where she discovered what she wanted, which was to be helpful to other people. She's inclusive by asking young people, what do you need? And then giving them the opportunity to participate. They provide physical spaces so that the kids can come together and work and study. They have access to information, learning things like building websites and, marketable job skills is what they learn. And all of that happens through these different actions of inviting people to get involved, of connecting and making introductions where those valuable relationships are seen, and then translating. Like, it takes somebody who has a lot of empathy or has that lived experience of being homeless, having mental health issues, to really connect with somebody who is experiencing something similar, and then be able to translate with somebody who might not resonate or get that what that experience means. So that's one example, Neil. Root Hub, you said that, let's see, your question was around, okay, so applying the framework, and we're talking about the space of COVID. So I want to share one thing that I'm doing and that David and I are involved in. We in January, we got involved with a group of people that have organized into a task force. And it's been, I think we're going on 5 weeks now of working as the task force C19. And the spirit of this task force is all about generosity and participation and supporting each other and seeing where you can be helpful. And this all happened because 2 people, our friends Andy and Chioko, and our friend Jai as well, wanted to get some like-minded people together who care about the world and be helpful. And so out of that, it's grown to now 80 people who are all have diverse skill sets, are effective in their lives, and are out to help and be helpful. And so the question that I go around and asking the other task force members is, what do you need now? Where do you need help? And let them tell me what they need, and then finding where I can help and fit in and be supportive in that way. Did that answer your question, Root Hub?
Yeah, I mean, yes. There, between sharing like an example, like Jewel, like that form of support, and like what you're saying about the first thing being like, what what does support look like to you? You know, that is so powerful. As far as like seeing that be that feels like an answer to the now, like navigating the now. Now, as we take that into a post-COVID, like after this, I guess that would kind of tie into like the possibility of River Simon's question of like, what if business is no longer the best type of organization? Or like maybe we can integrate those kind of two questions of like, what does it look like after we emerge from all of this, whenever that may be? Can we talk about that a little bit? And if anybody else has any questions about that.
So I'm sure other people have used this metaphor that we're in a phase of regeneration, or we're in a phase of rebirth, or we're heading into a renaissance, or that we're innovating, like that this is like a global innovation that's occurring. And it's pretty miraculous for our modern culture to never have had this experience before, to have the train come to a near screeching halt, to have the sort of quietude of being separated, and the lack of distraction of having to run around, which, but I will put a footnote for those with families and kids, like it's increased because now you're schooling your kids at home. Where I see this going is one of the things that has happened out of this. So I want to share, and I'll actually do a screen share right now. I discovered a book back in November of last year. Shout out to Roman in the DC community who turned me onto the book, The Chalice and the Blade by Rian Eisler, which changed my life and the course of my life. I was traveling last November, and I was in Morocco, and I was reading this book that was written about 30 years ago. And it is about the story of humanity before written history. And it addresses the fundamental issues of what's at the source of why things aren't working for humanity. And this goes to River's question of what if business is no longer the best type of organization. So I'm going to bring up a couple pictures really quickly. Hang on. There we go. Okay. So this is Rian Eisler. She is, let's see, she was born in Austria. She escaped the Holocaust with her parents, and they made it out on the last ship that was allowed to dock in Cuba. And she and her family then lived in the slums in Havana before they came to the United States, and they lived in Florida for a while. So she went from this experience of, growing up relatively privileged in Austria to then living in the slums and having the experience of her parents really being focused on contributing to the community, finding ways to give. And she then came to the United States, continued to experience being an outsider, continued to experience bias. She moved to California, graduated from UCLA with a degree in law and sociology, and then she went on to become a human rights attorney. She published a number of books, particularly women-focused in the 70s, and she wrote a book on the Equal Rights Amendment. And she then spent 10 years researching this book in the center, The Chalice and the Blade, Our History, Our Future. And what she describes in it is this, the underlying reason why we have the issues that we do, the underlying reason of why some parts of capitalism work and some don't, of why some parts of socialism work and some don't, of why there's so much violence and war is a given, and why there's poverty. She gets to what's at the source of that. So I can't recommend this book enough. What she says is the we live in, or there exists, she created a spectrum that goes from the dominator system, which is about domination and hierarchies. And in the hierarchies, there's in-groups at the top and there's out-groups at the bottom. And the way that this hierarchy is maintained is through force and fear and coercion. So those hierarchies include man over man, they include man over woman, they include race over race, religion over religion, and they include man over nature. And so this is this end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum is partnership. And partnership is about egalitarianism. It says that men and women are equal. It says that all humans are inherently valuable. It says that children are important because they are the source of our future human capital. And so on this spectrum, it's never either like really, you're always somewhere, whatever the system is, you're somewhere along the continuum. So capitalism can be more towards domination, or it can be more towards partnership. Socialism can be more towards domination or more towards partnership. And what happens when we go more towards partnership is that there's an increase of freedom in the world. There's an increase of appreciation for what are typically considered feminine characteristics, or for women's work, which is the work of care. We find that when we're more free, we have an increase in art and creativity. And so we end up like a pendulum swinging when we go towards the partnership end of the spectrum. The side over here that's maintaining power and hierarchies is going to go, whoa, 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 we got to come back over here, and we got to maintain some of this. And so we fluctuate. So we went from the medieval ages way over here to the Renaissance coming over here. And what happened? There was this huge explosion of human creativity and art. Right now, we're in a regressive period. We had since the late 1800s, a increase in desire for freedoms. In 1920, women got the vote. We fast forward into the 60s, we have the civil rights movement, the women's liberation movement. And then what happens in the 80s? Well, we started to have policies that start to pull us back towards over here, where we have the hierarchy of domination, where white people are superior and where men are superior to everyone. And in the domination system, it's not only in our economic systems that this occurs. It also happens in the family unit. And you see this in the way that children are treated. You see this if there are the traditional family values are ones where the man is the head of the household, and that system, that ranking is maintained by hitting the children to make them conform. So that's the domination side. So that was Rion's first book. She published it in 1987 after spending a decade researching it. A number of years later, she wrote The Real Wealth of Nations, which talks about creating an economy of care. And in this book, she identifies that there are 6 segments of the economy, but GDP only really accounts for 3 of them, but actually only 2 of them. So you have governmental economy, you have the market economy, you have the illicit economy, which is drugs, weapons, and human trafficking and the like. And then the other 3 parts of the economy that are not accounted for by our current system are the economy of community, the economy of the household, and the economy of nature. So when we look at GDP or any of the GDP alternatives, they don't account for these major generators of wealth that we can't live without. We can't live with poor human capital that comes out of abusive families. We don't thrive that way. We can't thrive if nature is being destroyed. So what she's doing now, what the Center for Partnership Systems is doing that she started, they're launching the development of a new economic index called the Social Wealth Index. And the Social Wealth Index will account for those aspects of wealth generation that are not currently accounted for. And so what does it look like moving into the future? So I'm now part of a team that is working to help get her work further out into the world. She's now in her 80s. I love this woman so much. It's extraordinary to get to work with her. And she, the in the next 8 months, we're going to be running a campaign that launches in July. And it's going to be to get this word out about Rian Eisler and to get the word out about what we're calling partnerism. And so the idea is, you've heard about communism, you've heard about socialism, you've heard about capitalism, but you haven't heard about partnerism. And there's an opportunity here, which I'd love to invite you into in June, leading up to the launch of the campaign. If this speaks to you, I would love to talk with you more about it and getting involved. And to give you a little bit broader picture, we'll be publishing a peer-reviewed white paper in January of next year. And so long as Davos is happening, we will hold an event at Davos, and with the launch of the paper, and Rian will speak there, and it'll be an extraordinary event. So back to your question of what does life look like after COVID-19? It looks like however we create it to be. It looks like whatever we are a stand for. And the work of systems change, it is immensely resource intensive. It requires a lot of us on the personal level. It requires focus, it requires care, it requires discipline, and it requires organization. And one of the things that I love about the Burning Man community is that we're really good at organizing. We're really good at caring. We're really good at community engagement. So if this is of interest to you, if you care about changing the world, I invite you to tweet at me or shoot me an email saying you want to get involved in this or you want to learn more, and I'll send you some more information. We can have a conversation about it.
Wow. Yeah, that is like, I'm already like going to text you. That's incredible. Her work resonates with so much of what we've been discussing in the last 5 weeks here. Somebody like Rian, one of our first our speakers, one of his points, Jordan Hall, I believe, was that in order to do the work you're talking about, we need to identify these people who have been specializing in this work for decades and mastering it, but they haven't been co-opted into the fragile system yet and push their work. So this is exactly an example of it. I think about the social wealth index because I was just interviewed yesterday by a personal finance podcast, and they were actually, this is all making so much sense because he was asking me about my personal wealth outside of his wheelhouse of personal wealth. And I just love that idea of adding, like, reuniting those missing elements. So I will definitely be joining that, and maybe we can even think about having some sort of breakout group in the Radcat Club to help with this. That's a possibility as well.
Wonderful. We would love that.
Yeah.
Well, one other person I want to mention, and by the way, this book on the lower right, Nurturing Our Humanity, that's Rian's latest book, came out in 2019. I'm actually reading it right now, and it's about how it brings in neuroscience and how in the dominator system, when we have children who experience trauma and abuse, how that impacts our brain development and what happens as we turn into adults with these traumas that are unresolved. So that book's there. I want to share about one other woman who I'm also a gigantic fan of. Hold on, there we go. Arlen Hamilton is my new favorite hero. She's amazing. And her book is coming out next week on Tuesday the 5th. It's called It's About Damn Time. I interviewed her on my podcast last week, and that episode will be coming out early next week. Arlen is the quintessential example of somebody being clear on what they want to create and then going after it and using teamwork to create it. So she grew up poor in outside of Dallas, Texas. She grew up with her mom and her brother. Her mom loved her tons, and Arlen eventually came out as gay. And she wanted to build work in the music industry because she loved music so much. And she ended up doing that, becoming very successful as a production coordinator, a tour production coordinator, and a tour manager for major stadium shows with musicians like Pharrell, CeeLo Green, and Toni Braxton. And as at that point in her career, she was around her 30s. She started to pay attention to the fact that people like Ashton Kutcher and Ellen DeGeneres were going to this place called Silicon Valley and doing something there, some kind of investing. So she started to learn about Silicon Valley and venture capital. And that was circa 2012, and decided she wanted to become a venture capitalist. So she got herself into the 500 Startups program at Stanford. She set up a campaign to raise the money so that she could go. She went. And then when it came time for her to start her first fund, she went to San Francisco and she spent time there. She didn't have any capital. She didn't have any resources. She was homeless for 5 months, and she would frequently sleep on the floor of the San Francisco airport. This drove her to keep going. And there were times when she wanted to quit, and she would ask herself this question. She said, could I imagine the world not having this business? And the business is a venture capital firm that focuses on investing in underrepresented people, or as she likes to say, underestimated people. So that's women entrepreneurs, that's people of color entrepreneurs, and that's LGBTQ entrepreneurs. So she got her first check in 2015. It was $25,000 from a woman investor named Susan Kimberlane. And the rest is history from there. She went on, got some of the biggest billionaire investors in Silicon Valley to invest in her, including Mark Andreessen from Andreessen Horowitz. And last year, Mark Cuban, who you know from Shark Tank, and who is also the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, he invested $1 million with her and told her to invest it as she saw fit. She invests in pre-seed companies. The check sizes are like 25,000 to 100,000. She's invested in 130 companies in less than 5 years. And she's become, if she's not yet a national icon, she is well on her way. She's only the 4th Black woman to be on the cover of Fast Company. She's the only Black woman to not be in sports or entertainment. The other 3 people who were on there were Oprah and Serena Williams, and I can't remember the last person. But like, that's pretty amazing company to be standing in, to go from being homeless 5 years ago to now she manages almost $10 million. So her book's coming out on Tuesday. I recommend reading it. I laughed out loud a whole bunch in it. I related to it. It's really inspiring and empowering. And if you need a dose of confidence in your life to be yourself, like, she's the jam.
Amazing. It is about damn time.
That's right.
Right?
I'm a fan. I'm hyped.
Unbelievable.
Let's go, Rosie.
Incredible, Rosie. Thank you so much. Unbelievable.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing these stories of people that are actually doing this and not believing not believing the narrative that they don't have the power. What was the word for the ism? Was it personalism? I'm sorry.
Partnerism.
Partnerism.
Yeah. So you have domination and partnership. And the system of partnership is partnerism.
Awesome.
And our goal with this campaign, so we've got the 6-month campaign from July to December. Then we launch in Davos with the white paper. And then our goal by the end of 2021 is for partnerism to be a mainstream word, for Rion Eisler to be a nationally known person, more than she is now.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's so, there's so many parallel lines going here. We were kind of trying to think of that a little while ago, of what is the post-ism, and we were talking about mutualism, which sounds very similar to partnerism, which, like, yeah, these post-isms and where they're going to take us is incredible. We've got, what do we got, Neil? We got about 10 minutes left.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
If you took partnerism, and you took the 10 principles, and you took your framework, and you took sort of the resetting of the landscape because of the virus, and you took your home city of New York City, and you take the cancellation of Burning Man, how does that all intersect, and what does that look like in your city?
It looks like a wonderful opportunity. It looks like an opportunity to create spaces that we haven't had before. It's been wonderful seeing this adoption of, like, the mass adoption out of necessity of virtual conferences like this. They just weren't taking before. And now it's become very common. So I think moving forward, we're going to see more of this collective organizing through virtual means. And that task force that I mentioned that we're part of, it's entirely virtual. And we're moving tons of resources. We're moving lots of PPE. We're moving, capital, making connections, all doing it virtually. So in terms of the opportunity in New York, I think the first thing would be we need to have some events that promote, that share what partnerism is and share what this work is. And then from there, the typical way that it goes is you host an event, and out of that comes some organically formed group that doesn't necessarily have defined objectives. From there, leadership arises, and then objectives are determined, and then you bring more volunteers in to get involved. So that's the path that I would see moving forward.
Great. Well, we'd love to see that pattern applied to every community. So, anything you can do to set that motion going, that's what we're all definitely all about.
Great. Well, I have a request then, because what I'm doing to set that in motion is being here with you tonight and speaking with you. And so my request is that you send me an email. If you have my phone number, text me. You can tweet to me, send me a DM if you'd like, saying that you want to get involved, and then I'll follow up with you.
Will do.
Beautiful. Yeah, and we will, what we'll be doing with this, we've recorded this, so what we do is we post these on our channel, every week. So we can also share that to get all of the wonderful information that you've shared with us. Everybody, please support that, send those messages, link up with our YouTube channel, our Facebook, so we can help integrate all of your ideas into this new partnerism, this mutualism, this opportunity that we have right now to be able to, wrestle with this new paradigm and, come out with that. I love the community. I'm so grateful. This guy right here, if you guys can see this button, if anybody out there is not a burner, his name is Larry, and he's the reason why a lot of us are connected. And I just wanted to give him a shout out as well. The effect of what one person can do with a simple idea. And he left us 2 years ago yesterday. So I want to say thanks for that. I think we have time for a couple more questions if there's any.
Or if someone wants to raise their hand or wave or
question here.
Yeah, please ask.
Yes. Thank you, Vincent.
Yes. First of all, Rosie, thank you. Oh, that's spectacular. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that.
My pleasure.
And I just think about with COVID and what happened, the amount of free floating creatives and people out here that are, musicians, actors, how will that almost like the social capital thing fare with them? Because I feel like they're just instant community builders and people like that. And I'm just thinking how do you feel like their value add would be in there? What's the presence?
You're answering my prayers right now, Vince. So one of the things that we're doing is for the Partnerism campaign is we're building a cadre of different artists. So that's graphic designers, that's art directors, creative directors, filmmakers, musicians to help generate content. And we're developing the asset strategy right now and when we're going to need what types of content. But I'd love to follow up with you to help activate your network of artists and get you involved in this.
Yeah, let's go. Thank
Beautiful.
you.
Thank you for the question.
We got time for one more. Is anybody else? Okay.
This question slightly differently.
Rob, what was that? Yeah.
Sorry. I think this COVID is for the first time in history tearing down what did you call it, Rosie? I'm sorry, the dominator effect, putting the power in the hands of the individual artists and others. So what comes out of this is really, I think, could be quite different, because for the first time, we're seeing artists being able to reach the people directly without going through a middleman. And so I think we should be looking at how can we encourage that type of partnership, if you will, between artists and their end users, as opposed to going back to the dominator style. So I think we're on the precipice of being able to really change how people think about society because of COVID. Mm-hmm. So in a way, it may be a blessing in that regard, because it's taken our norms and stripped them away and said, okay, how are we going to survive? And out of that are some things better than what we had? And I think the answer to that is yes. We just need to promote them. So
yeah, 100%.
Definitely.
I read something today online that talked about restoring the economy, and they said we shouldn't want to restore what was, because what was so out of balance. What was is based on the oppression of the vast majority of human beings on this planet. And so this opportunity, like you just said, the silver lining is that we get to create something new, where there's been all these decades of care being put into models for systems and new types of systems thinking. And now, we have the opportunity to help put that in power. But the thing that's most important is that we have to get leaders into elected office. That's how we change everything, at the local level, at the state level particularly, and then at the federal level. So it's really important to be politically active, especially in this divisive time.
Definitely. Yeah, this has been a really great time. And for those of you that don't know the format, at the end of the RadCat interview, I create an instant anthem about what we just talked about. So we're talking about creating new stuff but before I do, we have one final question for you, Rosie. That is, it's a bit of a fun question. It is, what is something radical your spirit animal would do on vacation?
My spirit animal. My spirit animal is a unicorn Pegasus. And the radical thing that it would do on vacation is finger painting.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much, everybody. After this song is done, we're going to be done. Thank you so much for coming. Be sure to check out those books, get in contact with Rosie. All of these things are so magical. Thank you so much, Rosie, for the gift of what you are doing, for tackling these world challenges and these impossible things. We really appreciate you. Make sure you guys get in touch with us. We could have you talking about your idea one of these times. And this is how we do it. We make a bunch of campfires, these digital campfires. We get around, we sing each other's songs, do our ideas. So with that, I almost forgot to put on my superpower glasses. I'm also Root Hub. And if anybody out there needs a frequency change or anything, you can send me a message. I will make you a song, 2 nouns and a verb. That's just a gift. So here we go. This is oh, hold on. I almost forgot to record it. Here we go. I'm a one-man show. There we go. Did you ever think you'd see the rat race knocked out? One punch or the train stopped. Got an opportunity to figure a new direction out. Oh, anything can happen. Now we know. I think I just saw something flying by. Oh, chalice in the blade. One fills, one cuts. We got a new direction we can make. Oh, that supports all of us in community economy. Oh, I think I saw a mythical creature flying by. I saw its horn, yeah, I felt reborn. Its canvas was the sky. Its masterpiece is a new world for you and I. Did you ever see a unicorn flying by? Oh, making the impossible possible, me oh my. Partnerism, build a bridge across the schism.
everybody nourished. Oh, and art and new world can flourish. Oh, you are the unicorn. Oh, I love to see you fly. Your canvas is the future. Oh, it's beautiful work of art, brings a tear to my eye. It's a painting of you and I.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Root hub. Yeah.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you for everybody. See you next time. Let's stay connected.
Lots of love. Thank you.
Thank you.
Such beautiful people. Love it.
Thank
you.
you.
Root Hub.
Thanks, Rosie.